so happy because my awesome introduction was done with a Grand shirt on. Thanks you guys so much for coming out Friday morning. I'm hoping I do a good enough job that maybe they'll let me do Thursday or maybe even Wednesday next year. I appreciate you all coming out in the rain and everything else. As you can see from the title, I want to talk a little bit about sort of strategy, but I am going to get into some specific tactics too, so I'm going to try to jam that all in about 30 to 35 minutes so that we have a little bit of time for Q&A if anybody wants. This was my title of my slide. I don't know if any of you saw on the actual agenda. It had this, and then it also said ... something like that, or perish. And I'm thinking, oh my God, HubSpot. I mean, look at the last couple of days. These guys love to embellish, right? I'm not suggesting if you don't start thinking like a marketer, you're going to perish. Just to be clear. But I do think we all know we've got some real strategy, some real challenges in all of our markets, B2B, B2C. I'm curious how many folks here are B2C media? Awesome. And B2B? Presumably everybody else. Great. All right, thanks. What I'm going to talk about today, I don't think is any real rocket science and anything really new. I have been in B2B a long time. You guys probably, we all know the company, CMP Media, who got bought by United Business Media, blah, blah, blah. All these different large B2B companies with my background. We've had the same challenges since mid to late 90s when the internet first started impacting all of our businesses. Right now, we've got a couple of key challenges, and I know I'm talking to the choir. The number one challenge is that top of funnel awareness is continuing to be considered more and more of a commodity, and our CPMs are getting crushed in both print and in digital. That's because our customers are valuing top of funnel less and less. It's not that they don't get they need top of funnel, it's just that they themselves are getting measured against bottom of the funnel. That's a challenge for us. Challenge number two, I would argue that all of our toughest competitors are actually our customers. I mean, I'd be very surprised if there's anyone in this room who hasn't had customers who have started to publish on their own websites, do their own webinars, create their own newsletters, do their own prospecting. A lot of them have marketing automation, or they are certainly thinking about marketing automation with HubSpot or someone else. They are acting like publishers. The good news, at least from my very small little vantage point, is just in the last, I would say, 18 months, I feel like there's been a slight swing back where our customers are going, wow, this publishing stuff is hard. To create good quality content that's going to end up generating leads for them. But they are, at least in my spaces, I consider them my number one competitor. I have a much harder time selling somebody on the value that I'm going to bring to the table versus them saying, well, I've got my millions of people in my database and I can send an email for free. Those kinds of conversations. Third and last challenge I want to highlight is even when it comes to lead gen, traditional lead gen, white papers, webinars, et cetera, any kind of lead gen that you might be doing.
I'm really sorry. Could we just check your mic? I think it's off.
So I don't follow instructions well. All I had to do was flip one switch and wait for the green light. Look at that. Well, the good news is anybody who watches this later will not have to hear that boring intro, so that's good. Third challenge, I might have to tone it down here, is the CPLs themselves. However many of you are dealing directly with lead gen and delivering lead gen campaigns for your clients or selling lead gen campaigns for your clients, this drives me crazy. All leads are not the same. These are three personas from my market. I've got a small publication in the computer-aided design space, and I've got enthusiast Ernie over here. I'm sorry, but Ernie, it's fine. He can go look at my free content, but that is not a high-quality lead. Civil engineer Sam over here. My partner Patricia, who's an architect. These leads, these people who might download a white paper or who might show up at a webinar are not the same. But I get beaten up, particularly by agencies, but by other customers, on what's your CPL, as if they're buying the same book, whether it's Barnes & Noble or Amazon or their local bookstore. They're not the same. So, I'm going to bore you with history from 100 years ago for one moment, if you will indulge me. 100 years ago, the railroad industry had a virtual lock on transporting goods around the United States. And what was really interesting about it is it was a highly capital-intensive business. It was expensive to lay rail, and it was expensive to build trains and to run them. So they had a virtual monopoly, the few railroad barons, and things were going pretty well. In the teens and really into the 20s and 30s, two things started to emerge: cars, more importantly trucks, and airplanes to start moving goods around. So if I needed something from California to New York City, suddenly there were a few more ways to do it. What was critically important, and the reason I've got the slide up here, is that most of the railroad companies, most all the railroad companies and the railroad barons thought they were in the railroad industry. So their response to this was to continue to lay more track and figure out ways to prove the value of moving goods on rails. And what they completely missed was that they were in the transportation business. And the transportation business was all about, how do I get a head of lettuce from California to New York the most efficient way possible? And if they'd realized this, they might have really started to think, in this highly capital-intensive business, that they were in an unbelievably advantageous position to buy up trunking companies, build trucks, buy plane companies, build planes themselves, and build the network, which we've all, in the internet age, gotten really used to the term, to deliver to the last mile. So move the stuff through the trains and then build the network that either is fast airplanes or gets you to the last mile with trucks. But they didn't. And I think we know sort of what happened to the railroad industry over the last 100 years. I mention this because I would argue in our business, this is the most probably exciting time to be in publishing right now, believe it or not. And the reason I believe that is because there's a fundamental disconnect right now in our industry between what many of us are trying to sell, or our sales teams are trying to sell and trying to deliver, and what our customers want. You know, we heard the keynotes from people like Seth Godin and Brene Brown. If you didn't see them, you're probably familiar with one or both of their mantras that they've been talking about. Certainly Seth has been for the last probably 20 years, which is about stepping, Brene had the quote, "Step into the arena." We have an opportunity as publishers to really start to change our companies, no matter what role you're in your company right now, and start getting every single person in that company to be thinking differently. I'm going to start talking about that. This is hotwire.com in 1994. I think it's October or November of 1994. The very top is the very first banner ever put on the internet. It was put on there by AT&T. I'm old enough to remember that AT&T used to have television commercials. They'd have this woman on a beach with her umbrella and the hat going, and she had her laptop, and the television voiceover would say, "Have you ever done email from the beach? You will." That was their pitch. And they were pitching cellular technology, laptops, lots of different things. They went to Wired magazine and was like, well, you know what? We're sort of interested in doing some advertising. Wired's like, well, I don't know, what do we do? I don't know who developed it. Somebody said, let's throw something across the top of your site. And this was AT&T. Have you ever clicked your mouse here? You will. Wow, that was prophetic. Unfortunately, nobody does anymore, as we know, but that was the intent. I show this because this was publishing's first sort of crack at what do we do about this internet thing. And the response was, well, we're going to do what we did in print, which is we're going to do adjacency. Today, fast forward, our customers aren't interested in adjacency nearly as much as they used to be. This is what our customers think about. They're marketers. If you walk out of here, hopefully you're talking to people in this conference. This entire conference is full of our customers, marketers. And I don't care what diagram you use, this is the kinds of stuff they're thinking about. Look at the agendas, the sessions everybody's going to. It's all about working through the funnel, lead nurturing, et cetera, et cetera. This is what they're focused on. They are focused on increasing sales pipeline. So I would argue there's a fundamental disconnect right now where publishers, many sales organizations, particularly in media companies, are still pushing reach and demos when their customers are focused on sales pipeline, incremental sales pipeline. That's what they're getting reviewed on in their jobs. Certainly, as you move up in the marketing organization, the CMOs, that's what they're getting tagged with. The days are long gone when a CMO would every year be given 4% of revenue for their marketing budget, have fun, go, see what happens. They are being tied to specific metrics against sales pipeline now. So that's my disconnect. I would argue, don't be a railroad company. Be a transportation company. Don't be a publisher. Be a marketer. The good news is we are awesome marketers because as you've heard for the last 3 days all over the place, and as you see all over the net every day, content marketing is extremely powerful, and we are awesome content marketers. We deliver excellent content. So let me get into a couple of more specific points. I would say that there's sort of 2 actions needed today. The first is to align and retrain your entire organization. I know, sorry, that's like, I'll talk about this. This is hard stuff. The second one, which I guess I did a lousy job with the slide, so it's grayed out. Identify the purchase intent and prove it. This is critical. This is what the customers want, and we need to prove that we can deliver the highest quality leads to them the most efficiently. Not replace what they're doing, but simply provide at least equal quality, if not better quality, at a better price than it costs them. And I'm talking about costing them to create their own content and the staff that it takes to do that, and do their own lead nurturing, et cetera, et cetera. So let's go to the first one. I'm going to hit on 3 areas of the organization. This, by far, is the most critical. This, by far, is the hardest. This, within even my own little tiny organization, is extremely difficult. I remember back in 2008, Outsell Research, who does, some of you may know them, they do research in the media space and information technology space. In 2008, they came out with a study that said 50% of all media salespeople should be fired. Another 25% need to be retrained, and then there's a 25% that get it, meaning they're doing solution selling. This is really hard. That was a long time ago, and it continues to be a challenge. But a simple slide here. This is what your sales team needs to be talking about when they're in front of their customers. This is Forrester Research data. They need to understand for every 1,000 contacts that we're reaching out to, 32% of those on average will become a qualified lead. That's 320 people. Out of those, 32%, weirdly, again, will become sales qualified, highly qualified leads. That's 102 people out of the 1,000. Those 102, 28% of them are going to actually turn into a pipeline, an opportunity for your advertisers' Salesforce. It's gone into their Salesforce system. And then of those 29, 7 will close. I'm not saying your sales team needs to know all the detail and intricacies of marketing, what's going on in here, but they need to understand that this number right here is what all of our customers are getting measured against right now. This is hard, but you need to start getting your salespeople to become marketers and solution sellers. Secondly, editorial. They need to understand the context of what we're doing here. I'm not a believer in church and state. I believe in editorial, quality, independent content. I am not a believer of editorial just going off and acting and doing whatever they want, writing whatever they want. I want them to understand what our goal here is as a publisher, at least for me. My goal is not to just create excellent content and then have a field of dreams business model that says hopefully people will come and hopefully people will do advertising around my content. My sole reason for investing in quality content is to initially find and attract somebody who's going to come to our site or to our product, who's going to, of course, then see one of our awesome call to actions, who's going to download one of our white papers, who's going to start to tell us more about them, and eventually I'm going to start looking for purchase intent. That's the goal of content. And I want my editorial team to know this. We have a sort of a simple way of doing it at Longitude where I call the internal lingo is Longitude qualified leads. It simply means people that we've identified across our database that have shown us purchase intent, explicitly told us purchase intent. The editors, along with everybody else in the company, gets an LQL inventory report. They understand how well we're doing, how many people in our database, our content is helping us identify purchase intent from their content, that they're a piece of this. Last quick comment on ways the company needs to think differently. CIRC, audience development, whatever the titles are now, it's fine to have reach. I'm not saying you don't want reach because it's a numbers game. But I think it's really important that people start to understand this, 60,000 versus 5,000. Out of your entire database, who is actively right now searching for solutions in your market? So with Catalyst, for instance, we've got 21 product categories that we've identified, and we know how many people in our audience are actively searching for solutions for those product categories. So it's important for Circ and audience development to understand there's real value in this 5,000, not just in getting anybody, Ernie enthusiast. Second thing, so let's talk about identifying purchase intent and proving it. This stuff is actually, at least the way we're implementing it right now, is really pretty straightforward. Again, not rocket science what we're doing here, but it's about getting the company and the team to focus on what our purpose here is. And our purpose is to find the highest quality leads for our advertisers. I'll give you a sidebar on this. We sell display. We do all, it's not like all we do is lead gen. But our lead gen has gone from 30% of our revenue to 60 to 65%. So it is a big component, and it's a much higher margin piece of our business. So let's talk about identifying it. The sales funnel usually is not a simple sales funnel, particularly in B2B. It's actually, this is from Forrester Research, it looks much more like this. Somebody starts going around, thinking about things, doing some searches, and they got a new project, they got a new reason to buy a particular product or software or service. And what happens is there's all these data points. They're pulling information from all over the place. We use HubSpot to both behaviorally and explicitly find people with purchase intent in our audience. So as an example, we do reviews of workstations, which is something our audience uses. So we'll do things like take a look at, see if somebody's gone to 3 of our workstation review pages in the last 21 days. If they have, we throw a switch in the database that says, they're showing some intent. We'll go, and they're going to be a target for potential offers. Maybe then they download a white paper, our buyer's guide or something. At that point, we'll explicitly ask, are you currently researching solutions in any of the ... Very simple. It's just a drop-down list of our 21 categories, and it's a multi-select using the HubSpot database. These are ways that we're just, in a very simple way, trying to identify purchase intent and using our content to do it. I won't bore you much with this. It's just sort of like a collateral that we use to talk about how we find the folks with the purchase intent. We do everything that you're hearing in all this conference, so I don't need to tell you about how you map your content to personas, and also basically the implementations we use with HubSpot, the list, the workflows, event triggers. We tap into all of that with HubSpot. I will say, from a sales standpoint, I've had much, much more deep conversations with our customers the last couple of years when I tell them that we're using marketing automation now under both of our brands. They're really interested in that. A lot of our customers aren't even using marketing automation yet. More and more are, and they're certainly thinking about it. What intrigues them is I tell them it's HubSpot, whatever the automation platform is they're using, that's fine. The IP, the thing that the publisher brings to the table, it's our market knowledge. It's our understanding of how we can use content that we create to engage readers and to try to find purchase intent. That's the gist of sort of what we're going to them with. They love that conversation because now I'm not trying to pitch adjacency or top of funnel or print ad pages. I'm talking to them about their ultimate goal, which is how do I increase their sales pipeline, and I tell them how we use our content and our systems like HubSpot to be able to do that. This is a really busy slide. Apologies, but this is what I use internally with our team. Back to organizational alignment that I was talking about before. This is just a simple slide that lets everybody understand exactly where they fit in the ultimate goal of trying to find out qualified prospects for our customers. This is all pretty self-explanatory. We use our content to find folks. We use HubSpot tools over in the upper right and our assets to be able to try to engage people that come to our site anonymously. Once we know who they are, we do a number of different things, as I mentioned, to try to track behaviorally what they're doing on our site and whether that's showing purchase intent. We use explicit questions like the example I gave you to figure out purchase intent. And most importantly, we actually track all 21 product categories individually. So that in this case, somebody might be in 3 different sales cycles at 3 different levels. Awareness, consideration, preference. We'll track all of that for each cycle. We also recognize that a vast majority of our audience, we don't know if they're in a sales cycle at the moment, or they may not be one. They've explicitly told us that. We do have a negative option. No, I'm not looking for anything. But they might, as we all know in our databases, they might surface a year later. Suddenly they've popped up. Now it's time to look for a workstation. So just a couple more slides. This is the money slide, I guess. This is where we've started to see some incremental revenue really grow with our lead by just doing some simple proving it. After we've collected the leads and delivering the leads, closing the loop. Most of our customers, even though they've got marketing, they may have marketing automation, they may have ways to try to figure out closed loop, did that lead turn into revenue? Most of them really can't do that quite well yet. And we want to be ahead of the curve with that. So we do some simple stuff. We send 2 surveys out after every lead. One goes 3 days afterwards to ask them about the quality of the content. This is great if you're using their asset versus your own, because it demonstrates, some of you or all of you may have experienced this, sometimes you get really lousy assets from the folks. And it demonstrates to them, hey, this really wasn't that useful for folks. We then send out a survey depending on the product category, anywhere from 60 to 90 days later. And that question says explicitly, in the last 3 months, in the last 2 months, have you purchased workstations? And if so, approximately how much and from who? 3 questions usually. That has been amazingly powerful. We've been able to go, one example, a $30,000 lead gen, we were able to identify $1.4 million of revenue from the 430 leads we delivered to a client. We were also able to identify a little over $3 million of opportunity pipeline that we created. And so what that says is, in the survey, we asked, did you buy? The second option is, no, but one is, yes, I bought. The second option is, no, but we're still evaluating. The third is, no, I was just interested in the topic, or we decided not to purchase. No, but we're still kicking the tires, falls into the opportunity bucket. So we go back to them and start talking about return on marketing investment. Hey, for $30,000, that was a 2% return on marketing investment. That's a great number. Your marketing customers are looking at 5, 10. I've heard one sort of crazy one say, for every dollar we spend, we want $6 of pipeline. That's a 17% return on investment. That sucks. You want a low number. For a pipeline, we were just under 1% of return on marketing investment. You can do this in a number of different ways. My point here is our customers, we had a difficult time proving the quality of the leads we were delivering over 18 months or so. And it wasn't until we closed the loop with those leads that they started to really wake up. We had a quarter where we lost lead business from a customer because they thought that we only created one opportunity from them. We ended up going back to them with our survey data, with the real empirical survey data out of SurveyMonkey, nothing fancy, and showed them what actually happened with the leads that we delivered to them, and they came right back. They're like, wow. And they had Eloqua, Salesforce, big teams, but they weren't able to track it. Somebody codes it wrong, does something different, existing customer, whatever. So a couple of reminders to close out here. We are still really valuable as publishers because we have the better visibility on when purchase signals are starting to show up. I didn't mention this earlier, but Forrester Research also has some really interesting data that talks about the fact that most, particularly B2B, this is a B2B stat, sorry, most people do 70% of their research before they even want to talk to a vendor. So our advertisers who are being goaled against the quality of lead gen aren't even seeing folks typically, even if they have HubSpot, and even if they're doing an awesome job with their content. People are more reluctant to hit those sites and identify themselves with purchase intent until much later into the funnel. This is a nice advantage. Because of our editorial content, they're coming to us earlier and they're trusting us to give us those purchase intent signals earlier. The second thing is we are awesome at putting together content. And you've probably heard it from other sessions, et cetera. Not only do we use our client assets, of course there's a lot of money to be made in creating content itself. So we use content to create our own inventory of leads, even if we don't have a lead campaign, just to understand, hey, we've got 1,000 people today interested in 3D printers. What do? We get the salespeople calling up the 3D printer vendors going, just thought you'd like to know, would you like to talk to us? So we use our own content, but we also, of course, do custom content for our clients, but we're selling that now in the context of lead generation and lead nurturing. So we'll even do a combination of their assets and our assets. We'll take a look at where their asset might sit in the funnel, top of funnel, bottom of funnel, in between, and we'll combine it with assets that we can create so we can actually do a lead nurturing campaign with a client. The goal here is ultimately to sell at a higher cost per lead deeper into the funnel. I'm much more interested in selling 100 leads at $300 or $500 than I am at selling 500 leads at 25 bucks or something like that. So just the sort of closing final couple of bullets. Aligning the organization, I mean, I get it. I hit this really at a high level. This is really, really hard. But I brought up the Seth Godin and the Brene Brown because it's imperative. No matter what you're doing in your organization, people need to start understanding the context of what publishers are bringing to the table for advertisers. Don't be the railroad company, be the transportation company. We ultimately are responsible for bringing highest quality leads and incrementally increasing our customer sales pipeline. Even a print ad, that's what it's there for ultimately, is to be able to deliver high quality prospects and incrementally lift their sales pipeline. So it's important that everybody on the team understands how they play into that and that systems and processes start to get built against that single goal. Use the tools and processes that your customers use. I mean, I'm using HubSpot, and as I mentioned earlier, customer conversations, they love knowing that we use marketing automation. They think it's great, and they get that just because I've got HubSpot doesn't mean that I'm all set. It's like, I use the example of a word processor. Just because I use a word processor doesn't mean I'm a Pulitzer Prize writer, far from it. So just because you got marketing automation software doesn't mean that you're suddenly getting all these excellent high-quality leads. That's what a publisher brings to the table. We've got editors who know how to put together compelling content. We've got editors who have excellent market expertise. We've got our entire company who's focused on a market. And we understand the goal here is to look and figure out purchase intent, and that's what we do. And HubSpot just happens to be the tool that we use to do it. And then proving the value. Can't reiterate that enough. It's so important whether you do it through surveys, however you close the loop. That has been a real game changer for us to put real numbers in front of people about how we are incrementally identifying sales pipeline for them. The last one I didn't touch on, and really all I'm alluding to here as somebody who's gone through 2000, 2001, that was what I thought was pretty exciting until I hit 2008, 2009, 2010, which was really exciting. At the end of the day, when you hit rough patches and the market might go south on us, or whatever markets you're in, there's nothing like being able to still call up and say, well, I know people aren't buying as much, but how would you like to talk to the 100 people now I know that are looking at 3D printers versus the 1,000? Oh, I should make a comment about this too. We are starting to call on a completely different set of advertiser contacts. We'll try through the marketers for a while. And if we're not having success, we'll start calling into the sales, like a VP of sales. And we get callbacks right away from them. They are interested in high-quality leads. So that was my fast run-through. Hit a lot of topics, so we've got a couple of minutes if there's any questions, or you're free to go. Thanks very much.